Hello fellow unicorns, today we learn how to draw a jar of dirt. Of course, that was a little joke I just couldn't pass up. And today we're doing a color with me video where I will be giving out finalized line art I'm making on this video of Chibi Davy Jones. You can download this on my Patreon for free and print it out. Note, just try to print it out on a bit of a thicker paper if you're using watercolors. If you're using pencils or any other medium like crayons, please make sure to jump in and try to color with me. This is a fast forwarded video, but I will be giving out some exclusive tips and tricks on achieving this effect with some textures and drawing different types of cartoony looks, but also making sure to keep everything a little bit more realistic. Also, there will be some parts of Davy that I wanted to emphasize with colors, some parts that I wanted to minimize, because when you're using a fully grown detailed character and turning it into a chibi, some things are getting emphasized and some other things are getting minimized. So for this drawing part that you guys will be skipping, of course, when you're painting, but still it's okay to know if you want to try and draw this character minimized, that's also quite okay. I wanted to show that you can make anything cutesy when turning it into a chibi. That's something that I even had a live presentation on. My friend was trying to draw out this horrendous tentacle creature to make it as scary as possible, and my job was to create it into a cute creature. And by creating Davy as a bubble-headed cutesy angry character standing in a bucket in the middle of a beach, I think I fairly did my share. He still does have these huge eyebrows and his tentacle whiskers and everything like that, but when the drawing is just done completely, you'll see that it's quite adorable and just you can't really see him as something that scary. But still, I wanted to do this character some justice by adding as many realistic textures as I possibly could. I do this with watercolors because this is the most easy technique to do all of the little barnacles and withered old textures on his clothing, and of course ripped parts of his clothing, etc. So what I did here was preparing my drawing to be more cartoony. I used thicker lines, and that's why I am sharing this line art with you guys, because thicker lines make everything easier to color. You can use any types of colors and use them actually really well when the line art is thicker, when line art is more cartoony. If you have less of a line art that doesn't have already pre-made shaded areas, things might get a bit more difficult to color in. So I wanted to share this line art especially with you guys so that it's easier for you to follow up and use any kind of method you want. Also, if you do something like this and do finish coloring the line art, please share it with me on your social media. Tag me at Mistiqarts on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. So I'll be happy to see your work, share your work, comment on your work. Of course, if you have any original artwork, that would make me so happy to see, because I really want to start collecting your artworks and your original works. So if you use my tutorials or lessons or anything like that, please share that with me. I will be so happy. I'll be one really happy mama unicorn, and maybe in some near future I'll try and do my best to do features, to feature all of you guys who have created their own manga concepts, original artwork, character concepts, etc. Also, if you guys want to learn how I did all of this type of shading and all of this type of line art, there is a video on line art with characters from Overwatch on my channel. I'll be linking it here, and definitely check it out because that's an extensive video showing you all of the art supplies and tools I used, and of course how I used them to create a cutesy chibi character with a cartoony feel with some really nice shaded areas. These big black areas that I usually put on my characters are to make sure to make my coloring more enjoyable, because when you do pre-made shaded areas with your line art, then you don't have to do that many shading and that much of a detailed shading thinking, I guess, when you do your painting process. I actually really dislike painting processes in any artwork that I do. I prefer the line arts, and I prefer this part of the work. So don't think that I'm just doing this for fun of it. I really dislike coloring in general, so I'm just trying to make it easier for myself even to color this as fast as possible and to make it look as cutesy and in character. Of course, the amount of thick lines and black areas depends on what style you want to have. If you do not want to go for this manga or comic booky or cartoony style, then you should probably avoid using thicker lines. If you're doing something that's more romantic or pastel or shoujo, maybe you should try colored lines. Maybe you should try not using big black areas to put a shaded, I guess, parts. But still, line thicknesses always come in handy to give your artwork some depth. As you can see, I'm redoing some of the lines. I am still adding black areas to make sure stuff that's in the back is well visible. And just when you encircle the main parts, for example, I'm going to be encircling his face with black areas on his hat. That's something that a lot of you might miss. That is why I'm actually giving out some of the trade secrets right in this video. So make sure to listen to the entire video, because I'm trying to give you guys some top-notch secrets that I don't usually give out, and some top-notch advice that it's always somewhere in the artist's head. But even when artists try to explain stuff, they keep it to themselves, not because they're like mean, it's just because it's their second nature and they don't remember that it's something important that they should share. So that's where I come in to explain and add on it, and just explain to you guys how much you will improve your artwork by adding those tiny but very important details. Also, when you're doing line arts, if you have a textured surface or something like that, for example, barnacles here, you can put them on areas where your color will be darker. That's why his pants are almost completely filled with barnacles. But this barnacle texture is always, if you guys look a little bit closer, is always going to the darker parts of him. This is where I actually create some sort of a textured fake shadow on this character's surface, including the little scratches and the little suction cup traces on his beard. They are all located beneath the shaded areas on his body and on his face for a reason. So here is the part where we finally start painting, and I just started messing up all of different colors. I saw that the undertone for this character was more of an orange and yellow and green. That's why I'm starting off with these colors, and then I'm just making it a mess, because this character has so many hues of different colors and so many textures that I just put a orangish base first, then I start mixing up greens and yellows and darker blues just to fill out different areas, and I'm doing it really loosely. Nothing is really that specific or that neat. That is why I really love watercolors, because you can do watercolors in layers. When one layer gets dried, you apply another layer. That's why it's important to know, for example, that it's good to wait for one layer to completely dry. While that layer or part of your character is drying, you should definitely focus on another part of your character until your first layer is dry. Don't start layering while both layers are wet, because that will result in your paper going so thin and so wobbly that you might even punch a hole through your paper. So that's potentially dangerous for your character. And of course, the only exception to this rule is when you have a really wet layer, you can use that and try to apply 2 or 3 shades of color at the same time to create a multicolored puddle, literally a puddle that you will leave to dry, or as you just saw, dab some tissue paper to create some discrete texture. And more times you repeat this process, the more times you will add some interesting texture. Also, dabbing on a wet layer will reduce some errors you might have made. So never be scared of watercolors. Of course, you can use your crayons or your pencils to do textures, but I prefer watercolors because when they dry, they do several things. Watercolors always start off a little bit darker, but when you apply watercolors, you will get few shades lighter color when they finally evaporate. Water evaporates and they get dried. This is very important because you will start seeing how many layers of previous colors you have put on, how rich you can go with different effects and textures and colors. And this is why you can literally layer your drawing into a cel shaded style where your shadows are really visible and they have an edge to them, or you can just dab your brush and dab it with different tools to get more textures and more shades of color. So it's just a limitless option. The only thing you need to remember is that you need to wait for one coat to dry so that you can apply another coat. This is why I keep switching from his face to his clothing to his hat or his to his other parts like background and stuff like that. And of course, whenever I make a mistake, I just dab. Imagine me dabbing. Oh my god, I went there, sorry. Anyways, I keep switching from surface to surface just to make sure that every surface is dry before applying another coat and then another coat. And when you just play around, dab some paper, then dab the brush, and then maybe use the wet technique where you combine different, like you make a gradient puddle on your character, you will get so many different fun effects. And the best thing about watercolors is if you made a mistake during coloring, just make that spot extra wet while it's still fresh, dab some paper on it, and you will literally remove most of the color and you will be able to start over. So it's not that scary at all. The trick is just to be a bit like careful, maybe just a little bit patient, and wait for the coats to dry. Just jump from coat to coat or surface to surface and area to another area, and in no time you will see so many amazing results. You will get so many cool effects like cool textures and everything like that. And also one trick, a good paintbrush is a lifesaver. I have to say a big thank you to my student Zemrant. She is very frequent on my live streams and she was such a darling. She discovered these amazing paintbrushes and she didn't buy them at an expensive store. She actually found perfect painting brushes at the local cheap Chinese made like stuff store, like general store, and we were so enamored into these new paintbrushes that we discovered, because I used to literally waste so much money on expensive brushes that did absolutely nothing, and the fibers in the brush would like stick together, they wouldn't do their proper job. And this particular brush that I'm using is like your ideal brush for everything. I can literally use its small pointy tip to cover every small detail. I never switched from this brush during this entire thing, so one good brush is all you need. Like total, like the paint tools that you have, like the paint palette you have of watercolors, and one good brush, and that's all you need. Like this pointy brush is all I really needed in this whole video. And I actually used the same brush on the drawing before, and that's the drawing of the two dragons. This is like 2 videos prior before this one. So pointy big brushes can do 2 things for you. Their pointy front end can help you fill out tiny little areas like this eye, and the big volume of the brush actually helps you store enough water and color so you can fill out a lot of different surfaces. And of course the video I did prior to this with 10 ways of how to improve your watercolor art, you can see it right here. This video also includes this tip, and that's just keeping your freshly mixed colors in a plastic lid or in a plastic palette. This is very important because it keeps the water inside of the colors fresh. It doesn't evaporate, it doesn't suck the water in, so your colors that you just mix are fresh for a longer time, and you can use them on bigger surfaces and reuse them and just get some similar surfaces on your drawing, because this is the only thing that I used to say that was bad with watercolors, and that's because you kept having so many different shades of color when you needed consistency. Well, with plastic lids you definitely can have consistency. So yeah, this is the scene where Davy Jones is forced to jump from a bucket to a bucket and just avoid touching the surface of the beach, because the undead cannot walk on solid ground, so they had to like improvise, I guess. And yeah, this is something that I really enjoy drawing, and I really hope you enjoyed drawing it with me. And of course, as I said before, just trying to add smaller details and just dabbing the brush and trying to add on darker and darker and darker tones to your existing art. This is the way to go. I saved the pure black, almost pure black colors for my finishing touches. It's very hard actually to get a really dark tone during work with watercolors. This is why I use pure black in my line art when I do watercolors, because pure black watercolor, when it dries out, it becomes something like really dark gray, and you can never really have a pure dark watercolor. And speaking of dark and light, I'm always using my super saver of a pencil. Well, it's more of a jelly roll. White jelly roll is something that I adore. I'm not going to overdo it in this particular artwork because this character is really dark. He doesn't have that much of a shiny personality or shiny bits, except for at the edges of his face, because he is a slimy creature, sort of. So I needed to just emphasize some bits on his face to be a little bit glistening. And of course barnacles, which we mentioned earlier, I wanted to draw out some barnacle texture at the edges of his hat, because he is standing at like a sunny spot, so his hat is a little bit glistening, I guess. And that will be some of my really intricate and honest tips about painting this piece. I really hope you guys learned something from this, and I'll be seeing you guys next time. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you would like to learn how to draw manga, please check out my book Manga Crash Course, available in 4 different languages, as well as my latest book Manga Crash Course Fantasy.